we talked specifically about slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And in slope-intercept form, what does the m represent? The m represents our slope, or the rate of change, right? And guys, one thing that's important to look at is this m, this slope, is the coefficient of x. All right, guys? So it's always going to be that coefficient. Oh, that's a c. Sorry, that's a horrible c. There we go. It's a coefficient of x. So guys, even if you have an equation that is written as y equals 5 plus 2x, your slope is still that 2 because it's the coefficient of x. Does that make sense? So even if it's not necessarily in this order, your slope is still the coefficient. Do you guys feel good about that? This is the proper order because, as we've talked about, you guys like to put we need to put our variable first, but it's not always there. Okay? Now, what does the b represent? Yes, the b is your y-intercept. Sorry. I don't like the way that looks. We'll try again. Okay. So b is going to be, your y-intercept. All right? You guys feel okay with that? I don't know if that looks much better, but we're just going to go with it. Cool? Okay. So b is your y-intercept. And guys, this is where your graph crosses the y-axis. Okay? This is super, super important. Okay? This is where your graph crosses the y-axis. I'm going to try one more time to see if I can look at it a little cleaner. Just wants to rip it. There we go. That's what I get for being a little too... There we go. Okay. So it's the y-intercept. It's where it crosses that y-axis. And guys, I will tell you, the slope-intercept form is one of the easiest forms to graph, and it's one of the easiest forms to recognize from a graph, because you can look at it and you can say, oh, if you can identify your slope, and if you can see where it crosses that y-axis, then you can be able to identify the graph really well. So, I don't want to say this is the most important equation, because there's actually two different types of linear equations. But this one is we use this a ton when we're graphing, okay? Also, slope-intercept form is the form you will use if you want to graph on a calculator. Because you notice, if it's set in y equals, that's y sub 1, but y equals, then it's going to have to be set in this y equals format. So in order to graph an equation on your calculator, it's got to be in slope-intercept form. So this comes in super, super handy. All right? Now there's two other forms that we're going to talk about today. We aren't graphing yet, but we are going to we're going to look at these two other forms, and we're going to work on putting them into slope-intercept form. Okay? So that we can be ready to graph them next time. So the other form of an equation that we are talking about is standard form. Okay? Now the standard form of an equation can be written as, let's see here, I'm going to use this little purple color, ax plus by is equal to c. Now guys, standard form is comes in really handy, especially when we are writing equations from word problems. A lot of the times, if they give you some sort of data or decimal or rate or something that specifically refers to your x variable or specifically refers to your y variable, you will be using standard form, okay? So standard form comes in super handy when we are writing equations from real-world situations, all right? However, standard form is a little bit tricky to graph. So what we're going to do today is we are going to take this standard form and we are going to convert it into slope-intercept form. All right? And the last one that we're going to look at today is our point-slope form. All right? So for point-slope form here, guys, what we're going to be talking about is this one is, this comes in super handy when you are given the slope. And what else do you guys think? A point. Guys, mathematicians, they can be super smart, but they're not necessarily the most creative, right? Slope-intercept form is slope, and here y-intercept. Point-slope form is the point and a slope. Now our point-slope form is y minus y sub 1, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, is equal to m, which is still your slope, parentheses, x minus, and then this other point is going to be my x sub 1. Okay? Now you're like, wait, why do we have two y's and why do we have two x's? Well, guys, the x1 and the y1, they will not stay x and y. Those are going to be changed into numbers because those are the coordinate points. Those are the values of your coordinate points. So guys, once again, point-slope form is great because it gives you the slope. You can write it using the slope. But sometimes, guys, in a word problem or in a situation on a graph, you are not given the y-intercept, but you are given a point, okay? So if you are given a random point that's on the line, which we're going to call x1, y1, okay? It could be 2, 4, it could be negative 5, 1, any point. You use this point in your point-slope form, okay? Now, one thing that I do want to show you guys that's pretty cool is, y'all, you guys get these little reference materials, you know, when you guys take your STAR test. Okay, so check this out. Under the reference materials, I'll turn off that light real quick. For linear equations, look, on here, they have the equation for the slope of a line, which we learned about on Friday. They have the standard form of the equation, which we just talked about. They have the slope-intercept form of the equation, which we just talked about. And they have the point-slope form. So guys, these are the big things from linear equations right here. These are the big equations. And so I just want to show you how important they are. And so we're going to be talking about them today. We aren't going to be graphing from them or anything. We're just going to be taking the two forms and we're going to be trying to put them back in to slope-intercept form. All right, so we're going to start with my standard form. Are you guys good with that? Okay, so we are going to convert our standard form, to slope-intercept form. Okay? So this is how we're going to try to do this. All right, so let's see here. If you want to convert from standard form to slope-intercept form, we're only going to do 4 examples on this, okay? So we're going to do example 1, and then I'm going to do example 2 over here, okay? I'm going to kind of go halfway, example 3, and example 4, okay? So we're just going to have 4 little examples down here. Okay, now remember, standard form was ax plus by equals c. So right here, what we're going to do is I'm going to take a look at this, and my first equation that I'm going to do for y'all is we are going to do 3x plus 2y is equal, and we're going to say 4. Okay? 3x plus 2y equals 4. I'm going to go ahead and fill in all of the examples that we have. We also are going to do 4x plus 5y is equal to negative 30. And we're going to do 4x minus y is equal to 0. And our last one that we're going to do is 3x minus 2y is equal to negative 14. Okay, so we're going to try these guys right here. So what I want to show y'all is how we convert these from standard form to slope-intercept. So guys, for each of these, okay, standard form, we have the ax plus by equals c. What does slope-intercept form start with? What does it look like? Scroll back up here. What does it start with? Y equals. So guys, that means that we want to get the y by itself. So we want to try to do what we can to get this y by itself. So what's the first thing that we need to do, that we need to get rid of? We got 2y, but we have 3x plus 2y. So guys, the first thing we have to do is we need to add or subtract. We need to get this 3x off this side. How are we going to get the 3x out of here? Yeah, we're going to subtract 3x. So guys, if we subtract 3x from both sides, then we're going to be left with 2y is equal to, well guys, can we do 4 minus 3x? Not really, right? We're going to do negative 3x plus 4. Okay? You can't put them together because they're not like terms, so you have to keep them separated. Okay? And then we're going to go here. We have 2y equals negative 3x plus 4. So now we are going to, I still need to get the y by itself. So what do I need to do to get rid of that 2 there? Divide. So if I divide this side by 2, then I'm going to divide each term on my right by 2. And we will be left with y is equal to negative 3/2 x plus, let's see here, 4 over 2. So that's going to be 2. Y'all feel good about that? So that right there, I just took my standard form and I converted it to slope-intercept. So guys, one thing that's super important to recognize is these are the exact same line. They're just different forms of the equation. One of them is in standard form, one of them is in slope-intercept form. Do y'all feel good about that? Yes? A little bit? Maybe? Okay. So guys, now what's really cool that we can do here is we can look and we can say, okay, well now that we have this equation, what is my slope? What is the slope of this line? Negative 3/2. Okay? What is my y-intercept of this line? Positive 2. Okay? So now that we've converted it to slope-intercept form, we can recognize our slope and our intercept. Could we easily see what the slope and the y-intercept was from standard form? No. So that's why it's nice to convert it, and then you can easily recognize, okay? So many times they might, certain questions might be that they give you this graph, or they give you this equation, and then you have a set of graphs to look at. And they say, which graph matches this equation? Well, guys, y'all can convert it to slope-intercept, and then it's way easier to recognize the y-intercept and the slope, isn't it? So, guys, this right here, the slope-intercept form is way easier to recognize on a graph than the standard form. Okay? So now, let's take a look at number 2. Let's do another one. So we want to get y by itself. So this is going to be very similar. So what do we do now to get the y by itself? What's our first step going to be? Subtracting that 4x from both sides. Yes. So we always subtract that x term first. So we get 5y equals negative 4x minus 30. Okay? Now what do we do, y'all? Are we done? It's not. We're not done yet. What are we going to do now? We divide every term by that 5 there. So we are left with y equals negative 4/5 x minus, what's 30, oh, I just said the answer, sorry. 30 divided by 5 is 6, right? So it becomes negative 6. So now, can we recognize what the slope is? Yeah, so, Amari, what's going to be my slope right here? Excellent. And what is my y-intercept? Negative 6. Okay, guys? So what I want y'all to do is I want you guys to try to do example 3 and example 4 on your own. It's going to be the same set of steps every time. You move the y, then divide by the coefficient. Move the y, and then divide by the coefficient. So I'm going to give y'all a couple minutes to work on that, and then we're going to see what happens next, okay? So I want y'all to do your best here to move the y, or move the x, and then divide by the coefficient. I'm sorry, guys. Was I saying move the y? I'm crazy. So hopefully, and then once you've put it into slope-intercept form, I want you guys to go then take it a step further and identify what is your slope and what is your y-intercept. All right, guys? I'm going to see how you guys are doing. Y'all doing okay with this? So let's take a look here. All right, do we have any questions? Do we have any questions here? How's it working? I see y equals 4x. I think y'all did great. And now I saw some of you guys put 4x plus 0. That's okay. The biggest thing to look at with example 3 is when you're left with that negative y, you're going to need to divide everything by that negative 1. So it becomes y equals positive 4x. So my slope is 4, and my y-intercept is 0. Over here, we subtracted our 3x from both sides. And then we did negative 3x minus 14. And then we divided both sides by negative 2. So we got y equals positive 3/2 x plus 7. Okay? Now, one question I get a lot is, do I have to leave them as fractions? No. You don't have to. But with your slope, it is so nice to have as a fraction because then it's already set up in that ratio of rise over run. Okay, guys? So I would always leave my slope as a fraction because that slope tells us that ratio, that rise over the run. So when we get to graphing, it will be so much easier to graph. Do y'all feel good about that? Excellent. All right, any other questions before we move on? So guys, you're going to have a few questions on your homework where you're going to convert from standard form to slope-intercept form. It's not too bad, right? It's just moving the x, dividing by the coefficient. All right, so today, guys, this is kind of the meat of the lesson today. Okay, so now we are going to be taking a look at our point slope form. Okay, so this is the one that, I don't want to say it hurts your brain, but it's just a little bit harder. Okay, so here's the deal. When you have point slope form, this is written as y minus my y sub 1, and it's equal to m parentheses x minus x sub 1. Okay? So sometimes, guys, you will be asked to write it in point slope form and then convert it to slope-intercept. So this is extra steps here, okay? With standard form, you're just going to be given the standard form. This one, you're going to have to write it and then convert it. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay. So when we are writing point slope form, the first step that you want to do is you want to identify the slope, okay, which is your M, right, and the point, okay, and your point is going to be written as that x1, y1, okay? And I feel like this is more confusing when it's just in this formula part. It'll get easier as we actually do examples, all right? So the second step you do is once you identify what the slope is and what the point is, then you will need to go ahead and substitute m in for slope. And you will need to substitute your point, that x1, y1. Okay, I'm going to do it in my colors here. My x1, y1 into the equation. However, an important thing to note, because it's y minus the y1 and x minus the x1, you have to make sure to flip the signs of the points in the equation. So when you plug it in, you're going to flip the points. Okay? And I'm going to show you what I mean in just a second. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys a few examples here, okay? So where we are going to take our equation, our set of points here, and we're going to turn it into an equation. Okay? So if we have a point that is, let's say, 4, 1, and we have a slope that is equal to -2, then I want us to figure out how we can write our equation. So guys, we are going to need to use this point-slope formula in order to do this. So how we are going to do this is first, it says the first step is we want to identify the slope, which is -2, and we want to identify our point, which is 4, 1. So 4 is my x1, 1 is my y1. Now we're going to substitute these guys into our equation. So guys, I'm going to write it out kind of without all the points plugged in, so that we can go ahead and plug these guys in together in just a second. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So this is kind of a skeleton of the equation. The first thing I can do is, what is my slope? Can I plug in my slope? Absolutely. That's going to be a -2. Okay, now I want to plug in my points. What is my y point? It is 1. So that just becomes y minus 1. What is my x point? 4. So that becomes x minus 4. That's it. You take it and you plug it into the equation. Okay? Now it's going to be super important that as we do this, we are being very wise. I'm going to give myself some lines here. Okay? I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do, let's do 4, -3, and my slope is equal to -1. So I'm going to do this again, okay? So now, before I convert it, I just want to see what we do here, okay? So we need to identify our slope. So my slope in this case is -2, and my x1 is, again, it's 4, but my y1 is -3 now. So if I build the skeleton of my point-slope formula without my points plugged in, I said y minus y1 equals m times x minus x of 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my slope. My slope is going to be -1. My y point is -3. So guys, when you subtract a negative, it becomes a positive. So that becomes y plus 3, and then x minus 4. So guys, this right here is what trips most people up, okay? They would do y minus 3 here, and they would do x plus 4. But it's y plus 3 and x minus 4. So the sign flips when it goes into the equation. Do y'all feel good about that? Okay, so then what we're going to do is now we take this, and now this we're going to convert into, so this is our equation in point slope form. But now what I want you guys to do is we're going to take this and we want to convert it into slope-intercept. So what do we need to do to convert this top equation from our first example into slope-intercept? Well, guys, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute, aren't we? So this is still y minus 1. Negative 2 times x is just negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 4 is going to give me what? Positive 8. Okay? And then we go here. What's our last step here? All we got to do is add 1 to both sides, right? And we're left with y is equal to negative 2x plus 9. So guys, these two lines right here are these two equations represent the exact same line. But this equation represents it with the point 4, 1. This equation tells me what? What does this equation tell me? It tells me the slope, which is negative 2. It also tells me the y-intercept, which in this case is 9. Now guys, did we already really know the slope? Yeah. Is it the same thing? Yes. Good. Okay. It should be the same in point slope form and slope intercept form. But this one just tells us how we can see it with the slope intercept. Okay? So let's go ahead and convert this example 2 right here. Alright. So if we convert this guy, this is our point slope form. But we want to convert it into slope intercept. So we're going to leave the left side alone for now. So that's just y plus 3. Negative 1 times x is just, I'm going to say negative 1x. Are y'all good with that? And then negative 1 times negative 4 is going to be a positive 4. And now we subtract our 3, our constant, to get the y completely alone. And this will be y equals negative 1x plus 1. Now, I would probably write this as y equals negative x plus 1. I would drop that invisible coefficient, but that's totally correct as well, okay? So in this equation right here, what is my slope again? My slope is negative 1, and what's my y-intercept? 1. All right? Are you guys, how is this feeling so far? Not too bad? Okay? Now, I've got to tell you guys, you have to be able to convert it properly or put it properly into point slope form, or else when you convert it, it's not going to be the right answer. Does that make sense? So this always has to be step 1. Okay? So I'm going to give you guys a couple more examples right here, okay? So this is going to be example 3. Your point is going to be negative 3, 2. And your slope is going to be positive 1/2. Okay? And then I'll do an example 4 down here. Your slope is, or your point for example 4 is going to be 5, negative 9. And your slope for example 4 is going to be negative 2/5. Alright guys? So what I want y'all to do is the first thing on both of these is just write it in point slope form. Okay? And then after you've written it in point slope form, I want you to actually take the time to convert it. Alright guys? So the first thing I want y'all to do is just write it in point slope form. I like to write out my skeleton first. I know that's a little weird, but it helps me because then I'm like, I don't forget things. Alright, so the first thing I want you guys to identify is that slope-intercept form. Okay? And then before you go to convert them, I want you to check your answers up here to make sure that you have gotten them into the correct slope-intercept form. Okay? I want to make sure that you guys have them in the correct slope-intercept form. Check those signs. The biggest mistakes that people make is either they mix up the signs or they mix up their x and their y, right? They put the x in for the y or the y in for the x. So those are the two biggest things that I see kids get wrong, is they mix up which one goes where. Okay, so you have to keep track of those x and y points. So go ahead and check your answers. Make sure y'all feel good about putting these in slope-intercept form. Once you put them into slope-intercept form, then go ahead and convert them. Alright, y'all? So those are the first thing. The first thing that we got to do is make sure we're putting it in slope-intercept form properly. And then once you have your two equations, I want you guys to make sure you can identify that slope and identify that y-intercept. Now technically you already know what your slope is because it's already been given to us. Hello. Perfect. Thank you. Alright. Alex, you know that's for you? Alright guys, so what you can do is you can kind of check yourselves here and see what you got. Alright, oh, I meant to unpause it. Alright, so can y'all kind of see that now? Alright, how do you guys feel about these guys? Alright. Alright guys, so here we go. Do y'all feel good about these? Okay, so the thing that a lot of kids kind of do a little bit funny here is when we have this 1/2 times x. Guys, I would leave that as 1/2 x. Alright? You could also write it as x over 2, but I prefer to have the coefficient of my x because that will help me with my slope. Does that make sense? X over 2 makes it a little bit confusing. But you could write it as x over 2. That's mathematically the same. But it makes it a little bit confusing there. Alright? And so then here, now this one with the fractions was a little bit tricky, wasn't it? So I did 1/2 times 3. How many of you guys wrote 1.5 instead of 3/2? That's okay. But I typically leave my things in fractions, but if you wanted to write it as 1.5, that's okay, because your final answer would have been 7/2. Bye, Alex. Have a wonderful day. Would have been 7/2 or 3.5. All right, guys? So we have 1/2 x plus 7/2, or you could say 1/2 x plus 3.5. Okay? I would not have written this as 0.5x, all right? Because that 1/2 will set us up really, really well when we need to put it in, when we need to graph it into slope-intercept form. Y'all feel good about that? Okay. How do you guys feel about point-slope form? Is it hurting anybody's brain? A little bit? Not too bad? Okay. So the last thing that we're going to talk about today is what happens when we are given point-slope form and, when we are given our point-slope form, or when we need to write it in point-slope form, but we are not given the slope, we are going to be given 2 points. All right? So we are going to talk about how to write and convert point slope form from 2 points. All right, guys, so here's the deal. When we were given point slope form we were given a point and a slope, it said identify the slope. Well, that was easy because it gave us the slope. In this case, guys, my first example that I'm going to show y'all is, or for example 1 here on this side, is we are going to be given 2 points, -4, 7, and, oh man, sorry, there's not supposed to be a little comma in there. My bad. -4, 7, and 6, 2. Do we know the slope? No. We have 2 points, which is great, but we don't know the slope. Is there any way we can find the slope from 2 points? You guys remember? Yes. Okay, so guys, maybe at the top of your page up here, let's go ahead and write out our slope formula. Do you guys remember it? It's y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So we are going to use this slope formula to find the slope. Then, once we find the slope, we're going to plug it in. Do you guys feel okay with that? Awesome. Okay, so let's go over here. So my slope formula, we need to find the slope. So my slope in this case would be y sub 2, which would be 2, minus y sub 1, which is 7, over x sub 2, which is 6, minus x sub 1, which is -4, so that becomes 6, plus 4. Do y'all feel good with that? So this is going to be -5 over 6 plus 4 is 10. So my slope is going to be 1/2. So now, do we have a slope? Yes, we do. This is our slope. Do we have a point that we can use? Yes, we do. We actually have 2. Okay? So we have 7 and we have -4 as our x point. -4 is 7. So let's use this point when we're going to plug it in. So we're going to plug this into our equation. And guys, I'm going to build our little skeleton. Are you guys okay with that? So I'm going to say y minus, I don't have my y1 point yet, equals m, parentheses x minus my x sub 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my slope. So that's -1/2. Then I'm going to plug in my x point, y minus 7. Then I'm going to plug in my y point. Or I'm going to plug in my y point first, right? So y minus 7. Then I'm going to plug in my x point, okay? So if we had x minus -4, what happens here? Becomes x plus 4. So that becomes our equation. Do you guys feel good with that? Okay, now that we have this equation, can we convert this to slope-intercept form? Absolutely. So let's take a look at this. So this is my point slope equation. Do y'all feel good with that? Then we're going to convert it to slope-intercept. So we're going to say y minus 7. Well, guys, what's -1/2 times x? Just -1/2 x. What's -1/2 times +4? That's going to be -2. Okay, and what is our final and last step that we need to do here? Just add 7. So guys, converting it to slope-intercept form is not too bad, is it? Because all you have to do is distribute and then add. So in this case, what is my slope? -1/2. Good, we already figured that out. It still matches when we have it in slope-intercept form. What is my y-intercept? 5. Okay, so guys, remember, this is my point slope form, this is my slope-intercept form. Those are both different forms of the exact same equation. Alright? And so we're going to do a little bit more with that when we graph it. Now, one thing you guys might notice is we are actually given 2 points, aren't we? So I'm going to do this time, where if we have -1, 4, and we have 2, -5, okay, we want to find the equation for the line that passes through these 2 points. So if we want to find the equation for the line that passes through these 2 points, how do we do this? We say, well, we need to follow our slope formula up here. So my m is equal to -5 minus 4 over 2 minus -1. So that becomes 2 plus 1. So then we have -9 over 3. And so then we are going to have -3 as our slope. Do you guys feel good about that? So we have -5 minus 4 over 2 plus 1 is -9 over 3, which gives us -3. So now that we know our slope, guys, I'm going to do this way. What if one of you picks this point? And what if your neighbor picks that as the point that you plug in? Is that going to be a problem? Well, let's see. Okay? So guys, in your partners, in your tables, one of you pick this as the point you plug in, and the other person pick this point as the point you plug in, and let's see what happens when we convert it. Okay? So I want you guys to, talk to your neighbor. You guys will both decide on different points to plug in, okay? Or the person behind you. And I want you guys to practice plugging these into your equation. All right, first question. What's going to be the same for both of you guys? The slope. Both of you guys are going to have a slope of -3. So I'm building 2 skeletons for y'all. Okay? If you guys are using the first point up here, then this would be y minus 4 equals -3, parentheses x. Instead of -1, what are we going to do here? X plus 1. Then if you're using the second point, y minus -5 becomes y plus 5. And -3 times x minus 2 is just x minus 2. So we filled in 2 separate things, and what I want you guys to do is now, let's convert them both, and let's see what happens, all right? So technically, guys, these are 2 answers. If I asked you for the point slope form of this equation, both of these would be 100% correct, okay? Because this is just from the first point. This is using the second point. But I want you guys to convert them and see why slope-intercept form is so awesome. Okay? When you convert them both, what are you going to end up with? It should be, spoiler, it should be the same thing. Look at that! Isn't that so cool? It should be -3x plus 1 for both of y'all. Do you guys feel good about that? Isn't that cool? So guys, it doesn't matter which point you pick, because you're still going to end up with the same equation for your slope-intercept form, because these are all the same equation for the line. So right here, guys, my slope in this case would have been what? M equals -3, and my y-intercept is 1. Okay? And so, guys, here's the thing. You will never be asked to go from y-intercept form back into point-slope form, because technically, could you have like a bunch of different options? Yeah, you could pick any point from the line. Okay? So you're only going to be asked to go from point slope to slope-intercept, okay? Now, before y'all get going on your homework, I do want to show you guys one more thing. How do you guys feel about this? Is this too crazy or not so bad? Not so bad? Okay, so I'm going to show you guys one more thing.